The engine was still ticking when the radio went dead. No gunfire. No shouting. Just the wind sliding down the valley, carrying the smell of wet earth that did not belong in Kunar Province. My hand was locked around the door handle, fingers numb, knuckles white. I stared at the rear of the lead truck and checked my watch without meaning to. 11 minutes. That was how long it would take the fighters on the ridgeline to decide we were lost. Or broken, or worth killing. No one said it out loud, saying it would make it real. I was wedged into the third vehicle, crushed between ammo crates, watching Sergeant Emily Harper. Most of the platoon barely noticed her. Quiet, older. The kind of soldier people forget to count. Her head was down like she was thinking, but her hands were steady in her lap. Too steady. The lieutenant keyed the radio again. Higher, confirm route. Terrain doesn't match. Static. Then a calm voice, far away. Route is green. Continue movement. Harper leaned toward me. What time you got? 2:17, I said. She nodded once. Her jaw tightened. When the convoy commander asked if anyone had another way out, the silence pressed down hard. Then Harper unfolded a worn piece of paper and said, "Real calm, I can get us out. But we have to move now. Subscribe to my channel, Lady Veteran Stories, for more real military stories, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from." I was a specialist then, deployed in 2009 to eastern Afghanistan, operating out of a small forward operating base tucked into Kunar Province. It was the kind of place that barely showed up on maps and never stayed quiet for long. Mountains pressed in on all sides, sharp and unforgiving, the kind of terrain that made radios unreliable and mistakes permanent. Our unit was a National Guard platoon attached to an active-duty logistics element, running convoy security and resupply between isolated outposts that depended on us whether they liked us or not. I was 23 years old, married less than a year, still carrying the stupid belief that if you followed orders exactly the way they were given, the world would more or less behave. That belief had not been tested yet, not really. I knew procedures. I trusted briefings. I trusted maps printed by people who never drove the roads we drove. That morning started like every other run. Fuel bladders, medical crates. Ammo sealed and counted. The briefing said the route was green. Low threat. Possible observation, but nothing organized. I remember rubbing sleep out of my eyes and thinking more about coffee than contact. That should have bothered me more than it did. Sergeant Emily Harper had joined our platoon late in the rotation. No drama. No backstory. She just showed up, squared away, already knowing where everything was supposed to be. She was older than most of us. Not enough to stand out, just enough that you could tell she had learned to listen before she spoke. She never raised her voice. Never fought for attention. She did her job and stayed in the background, like she preferred it that way. What people knew about her was land navigation. Instructors trusted her. Squad leaders deferred to her quietly. She treated terrain like it mattered. Not just roads, but dead ground, washes, elevation shifts. While the rest of us leaned on GPS and laminated route cards, she carried a folded map tucked into her blouse, pencil marks layered over pencil marks. I had seen it once before and thought nothing of it. Lots of people carry Lucky Charms. I did not know hers was preparation. The mission was simple on paper. Move supplies from one outpost back to the FOB before dark. No deviations. No delays. Command wanted us back before the light faded because night belonged to the other side. That was the understanding, even if no one wrote it down. As we rolled out, Harper checked her watch more than once. I noticed it without knowing why. She scanned the ridgelines instead of the road, eyes moving slow and methodical. The rest of us joked over the intercom, the kind of forced calm that fills empty space. My stomach felt tight, like I had skipped a meal, but I ignored it. Fear is easy to ignore when nothing has happened yet. About 30 minutes into the movement, the ground started to change. The dust darkened. The air smelled wrong. Wet. I wiped my palms on my pants and checked my watch again without thinking. 10 minutes. I did not know what that meant yet, only that Harper leaned forward in her seat and went very still. Her foot pressed flat against the floor, like she was grounding herself. She keyed the intercom. "Something's off," the lieutenant responded without irritation, just habit. "Route matches the brief." Harper didn't argue. She rarely did. She just nodded to herself and adjusted her grip on her rifle. I watched her jaw tighten, then relax. A small thing. Easy to miss. The convoy kept moving. Locals had warned about the weather 2 nights earlier. Flash rain in the high ground. Washes that looked dry until they weren't. That information had made it into no official report. But Harper had listened when it was said. She always did. She had walked sections of this terrain during earlier patrols, memorizing landmarks no one else bothered with. She had traced alternate routes on that map during downtime while the rest of us slept or complained. None of us knew that yet. When the road narrowed and the lead truck slowed, my chest tightened. The radio crackled. The lieutenant asked for confirmation again, voice sharper now. Higher responded with the same confidence as before. "Route is clear." "Continue." Harper leaned toward me and whispered, "Check your watch." I did. 8 minutes. I felt my mouth go dry. I tried to swallow and couldn't. Sweat rolled down my ribs under my armor. I didn't ask her how she knew. I didn't want the answer. When the second truck called out possible movement on a ridge that wasn't on any map we had, everything shifted. The convoy slowed, then stopped. Engines idled. Silence pressed in. Harper finally spoke louder, enough for the command vehicle to hear. "We can't stay here." The lieutenant exhaled hard. "Sergeant, we don't move without approval." She nodded. "I know, but we don't have time. The road behind us felt wrong. Too quiet, too open." That was the moment the training day ended, and something real stepped into its place. We were no longer following a plan. We were standing inside a decision, whether we wanted to admit it or not. The first sign was the smell. Not cordite, not fuel. Wet earth. The kind of smell that does not belong in that part of Afghanistan unless something has already gone wrong. It crept into the cab through the vents and settled in my throat. I tasted mud when I breathed. The road ahead darkened in patches, the surface uneven, scarred in places like it had been peeled and dropped back wrong. The lead truck slowed without being told. Tires crunched over loose rock and debris that should not have been there. My body tensed before my mind caught up. I checked my watch again. 7 minutes. Radio chatter picked up, clipped, and tight. The lieutenant keyed his mic, eyes never leaving the road. "Higher confirm route status. Terrain doesn't match imagery." A pause. Then the same calm voice, steady and distant. "Route is green. Continue movement." That confidence made my stomach drop. It meant they were not seeing what we were seeing. It meant we were on our own. The road narrowed until the trucks had to close spacing. The ridgelines pressed in on both sides, uneven and sharp, dotted with rocks and scrub that broke sightlines into 1,000 places someone could hide. I wiped sweat from my eyes and checked my mirror. Nothing, just dust and heat shimmer. Harper leaned toward me again. "What time?" 2:20, I said. She nodded slow, her jaw flexed. I noticed her left hand tighten on her knee, then relax. A small tremor ran through her fingers before she forced them still. It was the first crack I had seen in her armor. The second truck cut in over the net. 6. Possible movement north ridge. Stand by. My mouth went dry. I felt my tongue stick to the roof of my mouth. I swallowed hard and tasted copper. "Describe movement," the lieutenant snapped. "Can't confirm." Shapes, not natural. The ridge he was talking about was not on our map. I knew because I had stared at that map enough times to memorize the folds. I checked my watch again. 5 minutes. The convoy slowed, then stopped. Engines idled. Heat rolled up from the ground. The silence was heavy enough to feel in my chest. I shifted in my seat and realized my leg had been bouncing uncontrollably. I forced it still and gripped the door handle harder until my fingers ached. Weapons came up across the line. No one had to say it. Eyes scanned slopes and shadows. I watched the ridge through my optic, forcing myself to breathe slow. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. My breath sounded too loud inside my helmet. The lieutenant called higher again. 6 holding. Possible observation. Request ISR. Static stretched, then a reply. Hold position. Await guidance. Hold. That word hit like a punch. Holding meant time. Time we did not have. Harper leaned forward in her seat, then stood, moving toward the command vehicle. She did not rush. She did not hesitate. She carried her map folded tight in one hand. "We don't have that time," she said, voice low but firm. The lieutenant didn't look at her. He looked at the road behind us. "Sergeant, we are not authorized to deviate." She unfolded the map on the hood, weighed it down with her canteen before the wind could take it. "There's a wash west," she said. "Hidden entry. Solid base. It'll mask us from the ridge." He finally looked at her then, really looked. "My trucks are 96 inches wide. The cut is 100, she replied. "Tight. But it'll hold. And if it floods," she hesitated, "just a fraction. Then we drown," she said. "But if we stay here, we die." No one spoke after that. I checked my watch again. 3 minutes. The radio stayed silent. No ISR. No update. Just distance and delay. The convoy commander stepped closer, eyes moving from the ridge to the map to Harper's face. He exhaled through his nose, slow and controlled. I saw his hand tighten on the radio, then drop. "All vehicles," he said, voice steady. "Prepare to move." He met Harper's eyes. "You're leading." She nodded once. Her hand trembled again as she folded the map, then disappeared into a fist. Fear was there. She was just better at hiding it than the rest of us. As engines shifted and the first truck began to turn off the road, I felt my throat tighten. The choice had been made. There was no undoing it now. I checked my watch one last time before the road disappeared behind us. 2 minutes. And we stepped off the map. The argument never turned loud. That is what people get wrong about moments like that. Nobody shouted. Nobody slammed a fist on armor. There was no dramatic countdown yelled over the radio. It was quieter, and because of that, heavier. The lieutenant stood near the hood of the command truck, helmet tucked under his arm, eyes moving between the ridgeline and the map spread in front of him. Doctrine was written all over his posture. Hold position. Await guidance. Do not deviate without approval. Those rules had kept him alive up to this point, and breaking them felt like stepping into open air. The convoy commander stayed a few steps back, hand resting on the door of his vehicle like he needed the weight of it. He wasn't thinking about regulations anymore. You could see it in his face. He was counting troops, counting soldiers, running names through his head instead of procedures. Careers matter until you're standing in front of people who might not make it home. Harper didn't interrupt. She didn't push. She waited, eyes down on the map, giving the decision room to breathe. When she spoke again, it was measured, precise. "The wash starts here," she said, tapping the paper. "Entries narrow. Easy to miss if you don't know it's there. It curves west for about 600 meters, then opens into a basin." The lieutenant finally asked the questions that mattered. How deep? Shallow at the mouth. Firmer ground after the first bend. Grade? Manageable. We keep momentum. And exposure? She slid her finger along the pencil line. Mask from the ridge once we're inside. He nodded slowly, absorbing it, then asked the one question no one wanted answered. "And if it rains?" Harper's voice stayed steady, but I saw it again. that slight tremor in her left hand before she stilled it against the hood. "Then the wash turns into a river," she said, "and we're done." Silence settled in after that. Not awkward, not confused. Final. I checked my watch again. 1 minute. The radio crackled, cutting through the quiet. 6. Hold position. ISR still en route. Still en route. Always en route. The convoy commander stepped forward and looked at Harper, really looked at her, like he was seeing more than rank for the first time. Not a sergeant, not a subordinate. A soldier who had prepared for a moment nobody else planned for. "If we move," he said, "we own it." Harper nodded. "Yes, sir. No excuses, no reassurance. Just ownership." He glanced once more at the ridgeline, then at the road behind us. The space felt wrong, too open, too patient. He lifted the radio, hesitated, then let it hang back against his chest. "All vehicles," he said, voice calm and even. "We're deviating." Follow lead. That was it. No speech. No speech. No justification. Just a decision that couldn't be undone. Engines shifted tone as drivers prepared to move. The sound felt louder than it should have in the still air. I felt my heart pounding in my throat, felt sweat gather under my armor despite the breeze. My hands shook just enough that I had to clench them into fists. Harper folded the map carefully, like it was something fragile, then climbed into the lead truck. As she pulled herself up, she paused for half a second, breathing deep, grounding herself. Fear was there. Anyone watching closely could see it. She wasn't fearless, she was disciplined. The first truck eased off the road, tires dropping into the wash with a dull thud that echoed up the walls. Dust puffed, then settled. One by one, the convoy followed. As our truck left the road behind, I felt something in my chest shift. The safety of the plan we'd been briefed on disappeared the moment our tires hit that softer ground. Whatever happened next would belong to us alone. I checked my watch again, though the countdown no longer mattered the same way. Time had run out. We weren't waiting anymore. We were moving. Turning off the road felt like driving off the edge of the world. The tires slid from hard-packed dirt into softer ground, suspension dipping just enough to make my stomach drop. The wash was narrower than it had looked on the map, walls rising uneven on both sides, close enough that the sky broke into jagged strips above us. The ground looked solid, but I knew better now. Ground lies. One bad angle, one heavy throttle, and the earth would take a truck whole. Harper rode in the lead vehicle, leaning forward in her seat, eyes locked on the terrain ahead. One hand was flat on the dash like she could feel the ground through the metal. The other hovered in the air, tracing turns before we reached them. "Ease left," she said. "Hold speed. Don't brake here." Her voice was calm, but it wasn't effortless. I could hear the control in it, the way every word was measured to keep something else from slipping out. The radio exploded with confusion. 6, say again. "You are off route. Confirm deviation. Return to planned movement immediately." The convoy commander didn't answer. He reached down and turned the volume lower. Not off. Just quiet enough that it couldn't reach into our heads anymore. Dust boiled up behind us, thick and choking. Visibility dropped to almost nothing in the mirrors. I wiped sweat from my eyes with the back of my glove and checked my watch again. 4 minutes. My mouth was so dry my tongue stuck when I tried to swallow. My heart felt like it was trying to punch its way out of my chest. I forced myself to breathe slow, counting each inhale like it mattered. The wash twisted sharply, walls closing in tighter. Sound disappeared in there. Engines lost their echo. Even the radio chatter felt distant, like it was happening underwater. The air pressed in, heavy and close. Then the engine in the third truck coughed. Once. Twice. It died. The silence hit hard enough to make my ears ring. I checked my watch without thinking. 3 minutes. Truck 3 down, someone said, too loud. Engine stalled. Nobody yelled. Panic wastes time. Drivers dismounted fast, movements sharp and practiced. A mechanic slid under the hood, hands already working. I jumped out and took a knee, rifle up, scanning the ridgeline that loomed above us like a set of teeth. Sweat ran into my eyes. My hands shook so bad I had to tighten my grip to steady the sight picture. I tasted metal in the back of my throat. Harper was already out of the lead truck, rifle shouldered, body angled to cover the high ground. She scanned left to right, slow and deliberate, like she was daring someone to make a mistake. "Status," she called, not turning around. "Fuel line," the mechanic said. "Debris." I got it. I checked my watch again. 2 minutes. Every second stretched. I could hear my own breathing inside my helmet, loud and uneven. Somewhere behind me, a soldier whispered a prayer. Somewhere else, someone cursed under their breath. A shape moved on the ridge. I froze. It shifted again. Rock slide, or not. "Eyes up," I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. Harper didn't move, but her shoulders tightened. I saw her left hand shake again, just a flicker, before she clenched it into the rifle stock. Fear was there. It just didn't own her. Almost, the mechanic said. Another second ticked by. The engine sputtered, caught, then roared back to life. Relief hit so hard my knees almost buckled. No one cheered. No one smiled. We didn't have time for relief. "Mount up," Harper snapped. Now, she didn't say please. She didn't have to. Engines came up together one by one, the sound rolling through the wash like a heartbeat restarting. The convoy moved again, slow but steady, hugging the curve as the wash bent west, just like she said it would. I climbed back into my seat and slammed the door shut, hands still shaking. I checked my watch again. 1 minute. The wash widened slightly, walls pulling back just enough to let in more light. The dust thinned. The ground firmed under the tires. With every meter forward, the road we left behind felt farther away, like a bad decision we'd survived by inches. The radio crackled again, voices sharp with urgency. 6, halt immediately. Say your status. You are entering an unconfirmed area. No one answered. We were past the point where those orders meant anything. As we pushed deeper into the wash, I kept watching the mirrors, waiting for muzzle flashes, waiting for movement, waiting for the moment everything went wrong. My knuckles were white on the grab handle. My jaw ached from clenching it so hard. Trust didn't feel noble. It didn't feel inspiring. It felt like nausea, like shaking hands, like counting seconds and hoping the ground held. Ahead of us, Harper raised her hand and signaled a turn. The wash opened just enough to breathe. And for the first time since we'd left the road, I realized something that scared me almost as much as the ridgeline. We were still alive because we kept moving, and stopping again was not an option. The wash tightened again after that, like it didn't want to let us go. The walls rose higher and leaned inward, squeezing the space until the sky was nothing but a thin, broken strip overhead. Sound changed down there. Engines stopped echoing. Radios sounded muffled, like they were wrapped in cloth. It felt like being swallowed alive. I could hear my own breathing over everything else. Fast. Shallow. I tried to slow it down and failed. My chest felt tight, like someone had cinched a strap around it and pulled. Sweat pooled at the small of my back and soaked into my kit. I wiped my hands on my pants and realized they were shaking again. I checked my watch. 0 minutes. That number didn't bring relief. It brought something worse. We were past the deadline. Past the window where indecision killed you. Whatever was going to happen next would happen because of the choices we'd already made. The trucks crept forward, suspension groaning as tires climbed over uneven ground. Drivers kept momentum just high enough to avoid sinking, just low enough to keep control. Nobody spoke unless they had to. Hand signals passed down the line. A fist, 2 fingers, a flat palm. The kind of communication you trust when words feel like they might crack. I scanned the ridgeline through my optic. eyes burning from sweat and dust. Every shadow looked wrong. Every rock felt like it might move if I stared at it too long. My jaw ached from clenching it. My tongue felt thick in my mouth. Then the shots came. Sharp cracks snapped against the rock walls above us, not close, not precise. Testing shots. The kind fired to see how fear responds. The sound bounced and twisted until it was impossible to tell exactly where they came from. My body reacted before my brain did. Rifle up. Safety off. My sight picture wobbled because my hands wouldn't stop trembling. My heart slammed so hard I felt it in my throat. No one returned fire. Harper's arm cut through the air from the lead truck. "Keep moving," she shouted. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. There was strain in it now. A tightness she hadn't let through before. The drivers didn't hesitate. Engines climbed a notch. Tires bit into the ground. The convoy pushed forward, hugging the curve of the wash as it twisted sharply to the west. I checked my watch again, even though it no longer mattered. Still, nothing but seconds. Another shot cracked, farther away this time. Frustrated, impatient. Whoever was up there wanted us to stop. They wanted us to bunch up. They wanted us stuck. We didn't give them that. The wash bent again and then, suddenly, opened. The space ahead widened into a basin, low and shallow, exactly like Harper said it would be. The walls dropped just enough to let air move again. Sparse brush dotted the ground, breaking up our outline. The earth flattened, firmer now, forgiving under the tires. Relief hit me so hard my vision blurred for a second. I sucked in a breath and realized how close I'd been to hyperventilating. She had been right. Exactly right. The radio came back to life all at once, voices overlapping, sharp with urgency. 6. Say your status. You are off route. Return to planned movement immediately. Confirm you are not in contact. The convoy commander listened for half a second, then reached down and turned the volume lower again. Not off. Just enough to take the edge away. Those orders belonged to a convoy that no longer existed. We had crossed into ground that wasn't on anyone's screen. The maps back home didn't show this basin. The cameras weren't pointed here. Help wasn't 10 minutes away anymore. It was an idea, a concept. Another shot cracked, even farther this time. Then, nothing. Whoever had been watching us was losing their angle. The wash had hidden us. The basin flattened us out. Their advantage was slipping, and they knew it. I forced myself to keep scanning, even as my legs started to shake with delayed adrenaline. This wasn't over. It was just changing shape. Danger doesn't disappear. It relocates. Harper stayed focused, eyes constantly moving. She called out turns before we reached them, guiding the drivers through ground that would have looked meaningless to anyone else. Every decision she made pulled us farther from the road and deeper into terrain that belonged to no one. I watched her from my seat and noticed something new. Her shoulders were tight now. Her breathing wasn't as controlled. When she spoke, there was a faint edge to it, like she was holding herself together by force. Preparation doesn't erase fear. It just gives fear somewhere to go. The convoy moved faster now, but never fast enough to lose discipline. We stayed spread just enough to avoid clustering. Wounded trucks stayed in the center. Weapons stayed out. I kept thinking about the shots, about how easily they could have turned deadly if we had stopped. If we had waited one more minute back on the road. If we had argued instead of moving. 11 minutes. That number kept circling in my head, heavy with everything it could have meant. It wasn't a countdown anymore. It was a reminder. A measure of how close we had come to being surrounded by consequences we couldn't outrun. Fear doesn't always feel loud. Sometimes it settles deep in your chest and waits to see what you'll do with it. As we pushed through the basin, radios murmuring useless commands behind us, I understood something I hadn't before. The most dangerous moment of that mission hadn't been the shots or the terrain. It had been the moment we decided to trust someone who saw what the rest of us missed. We were past the point of going back now. The road we'd left behind might as well have been another life. And as the convoy pressed forward, hidden and moving, I realized that survival often depends on committing fully to a choice before doubt has time to catch up. We lost the last truck just as the basin began to narrow again, right when it felt like the ground might finally let us go. The sound came first, a sharp crack, louder than gunfire, followed by the grinding scream of rubber tearing itself apart. The rear vehicle lurched hard to the left, metal scraping rock, the driver fighting the wheel with everything he had. The truck didn't roll. That alone probably saved lives. It came to rest at an angle that felt wrong, nose down, rear axle twisted like it had given up. "Truck 6 down," someone said over the net. "Too fast." "Too tight. Axle's gone," the driver added. Tires shredded. I checked my watch. We weren't counting minutes anymore. We were counting seconds before someone up on the ridge decided we were slow enough to finish. "Bail out," the convoy commander ordered. Fast. Doors flew open. Soldiers spilled into the basin low and hard, rifles snapping up on instinct. The air smelled like burned rubber and hot metal. My boots slipped on loose rock as I moved, knees screaming under the weight of my kit. "Grab what matters," Harper shouted. "Comms. Medical. Ammo only. Only." That word landed hard. Hands went to straps, yanking loose crates that fought back. Someone slipped and went down hard, the sound of bone on rock making my stomach flip. I grabbed their vest and hauled them up without thinking. Blood smeared across my glove, not mine. I didn't ask whose. "Contact?" someone yelled. "No confirmed," came the reply, but eyes everywhere. Harper was already covering the high ground, rifle steady, body angled into the slope. She looked smaller out there than she had in the truck, exposed in a way that made my chest tighten. Her shoulders were rigid now, jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jump. "Move faster," she snapped. "They're watching." I ran back to the disabled truck for one more load and froze for half a second. Inside the cab, taped to the dash, was the picture of my daughter, her crooked smile. The one I touched before every movement without realizing I was doing it. My camera sat beside it. Letters from home stuffed into the door pocket, folded and refolded until the paper was soft. "Leave it," Harper yelled. Louder this time, sharper. "Now," I hesitated, then I slammed the door. The sound felt final, like sealing something away that I didn't know how to carry anymore. I turned and ran, lungs burning, vision tunneling. A shot cracked from the ridge. Closer this time. "Move, move, move," someone screamed. We formed up around the wounded, tighter now, weapons out. One soldier cradled a smashed wrist against his chest, face pale but silent. Another limped hard, jaw clenched, refusing help. Nobody wanted to be the reason we slowed down again. The mechanic looked back at the truck one last time. "Can't save it," he said. Not angry, just done. The convoy commander nodded once. "Leave it." Those two words carry weight you don't understand until you say them. We moved out fast, boots slipping, breath ragged. I kept expecting a burst of fire, something committed this time. It didn't come. Another shot cracked, then another, both wide. Warning shots. Frustration. Then nothing. When we finally cleared the far edge of the basin and the ground firmed under our boots and tires, the firing stopped completely. Whoever had been watching decided the cost wasn't worth the chase anymore, or maybe they just ran out of patience. Either way, the silence that followed felt heavier than the gunfire. We rolled the rest of the way back to the FOB under fading light, engines humming, nobody talking unless they had to. The wounded sat quiet, pain settling in as adrenaline drained away. Dust caked our faces. My hands wouldn't stop shaking no matter how tightly I clenched them. We crossed the gate after dark. One truck short, several soldiers hurt. Everyone breathing. We parked in silence. Accountability checks ran again and again. Medics took over. Questions waited in the corners, but no one asked them yet, not while we were still standing. Under the harsh white lights, I finally looked down at my hands, still streaked with someone else's blood. I didn't know whose. I didn't ask. We had left that morning as a routine convoy. We came back changed, carrying less gear and more weight than we knew how to explain. As I watched Harper walk away toward the admin tents alone, shoulders slumped just enough to show the cost, I understood something that would stay with me for years. Survival doesn't always look like victory. Sometimes it just looks like coming back with everyone alive and knowing exactly how close it came to being worse. Command was furious when we rolled back in. That came first, loud and sharp, voices tight with secondhand adrenaline. Questions came before we even finished shutting down the engines. Why did you deviate? Who authorized the route change? Why was a vehicle abandoned? No one answered right away. We were still catching our breath. Still making sure names were being answered when they were called. Then the head counts came back clean. No fatalities. That word changed everything. The volume dropped after that. Anger didn't disappear, but it shifted. Fury gave way to relief, and relief eventually settled into something quieter and harder to define. People started to realize how close the margin had been, even if they didn't want to say it out loud. Reports were written over the next few days. Careful language. Passive sentences. Words chosen to explain without fully explaining. The deviation became a situational response. The loss of the truck was unavoidable. Injuries were non-life-threatening. Blame moved the way it always does, spread thin enough that no single person carried too much of it. Harper's name appeared in the paperwork, but not the way it should have. She was listed as present, as assisting. As part of the convoy, her map was mentioned once, briefly, labeled an unapproved navigation aid. It was taken, folded, and placed in a folder somewhere. No one asked how long she had been carrying it. No one asked how many times it had already kept people alive. There was no public praise. No formation mention. No quiet congratulations behind closed doors. The military is careful about celebrating decisions that bend rules, even when those decisions save lives, especially when they save lives. Harper didn't push back. If the silence bothered her, she never showed it. She went back to being who she had always been, first to show up, last to leave, quiet, invisible. In some ways, that invisibility protected her. Attention cuts both ways, and she already knew the cost of being seen. The wounded healed in pieces. A wrist in a cast. A knee wrapped tight for weeks. Scars that would fade just enough to invite questions later. They joked when they could. Joking is easier than sitting with how close things came. Physical pain is simpler than memory. The supplies mattered. Fuel moved where it was needed. Medical gear reached people we would never meet. Somewhere down the line, someone didn't run out of something critical because we made it back when we did. That mattered, even if no one connected it to the choices that made it possible. What stayed with me wasn't the paperwork or the arguments. It was the margin. The thin space between how the story ended and how it could have ended. A stalled engine that didn't restart. A shot fired with intent instead of curiosity. One more minute spent waiting on a road that felt wrong. I still think about how close we came and how little would have been said if it had gone the other way. If we had failed, there would have been investigations, clear conclusions. Lessons learned written in bold, names attached to mistakes. Because we succeeded, it became quiet history. A near miss carried only by the people who felt it in their bones. That's how most things are in the military. You don't hear about the moments that almost broke. You hear about victories or tragedies. The narrow escapes disappear. But the lesson stayed. I stopped trusting distance over ground truth. I started watching who paid attention when no one was watching them. I learned that competence doesn't announce itself, and preparation often looks like silence. And I learned that sometimes the difference between a report and a memory is one quiet person who refuses to ignore what everyone else explains away. Years later, I still see her hands unfolding that map. The paper worn thin, the pencil lines faded but certain. I remember the way her fingers shook for just a moment before she forced them still, like she was locking something away so the rest of us could keep breathing. She never talked about that day afterward. Neither did most of us. That is how a lot of things end in the military. Not with medals or speeches, but with silence and the slow understanding of what almost happened. People ask me why that convoy stays so clear in my mind when others have blurred together. It is because leadership does not always wear rank, and courage does not always sound confident. Sometimes it looks like preparation no one asked for, and calm that costs more than anyone notices. Sometimes it sits quietly in the back of a truck, waiting until there are 11 minutes left and no good options. That day changed how I see people. I stopped mistaking volume for competence. I started watching who listened, who noticed details, who prepared for problems that hadn't announced themselves yet. I learned that maps matter, but listening matters more, and that the people you overlook might be the reason you come home instead of becoming a line in a report. We did not get awards for that mission. What we got was another morning. Another roll call where every name was answered. Another chance to drink bad coffee and complain about nothing important. In that world, that is more than enough. Subscribe to my channel, Lady Veteran Stories, for more real military stories, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from.